I've devoted the last couple of weeks to Midjourney, which lets you create some beautiful looking images. But Adobe Firefly has the power of an experienced and specialized team behind it. And in the following 10 ways, it's just plain better. Now, I think we can all agree kind of the major advantage right now to Firefly over Midjourney is that it's free. It doesn't cost any money so long as it remains in beta. And so that's the big thing right now is it's in beta, so they're not charging for it. I tested it out. I just signed in with a Google account, not my standard Adobe account. It worked just fine. All the functionality is there. Midjourney sells a basic plan for $10 a month, which is not bad. I think that's pretty affordable, which for most folks is all you need. And now, right now, there's no word from Adobe on how much Firefly will cost when it emerges from beta, which one day, presumably, it will, when we get rid of those watermarks that you can remove using Generative Fill in Photoshop. But still, one day it may cost something. I hope to see it included with any CC plan. So, for example, for Adobe Express, it's $9.99 a month. And that seems to me, because it does include Firefly functionality, that should also include Firefly. That's just me talking. I don't know a darn thing about how things are really going to shake out. For both companies, I just want to make this clear, the remote GPU processing is the major factor in cost. So you're paying for a ton of GPU time, a bunch of electricity, all that kind of stuff. It is a very expensive process. And so, for what it's worth, right now Adobe is footing the bill and it's free to play. All right, next. A modular GUI. So, although Midjourney has promised a GUI for months, I think since around March, it currently works only as a command line prompt through Discord. We'll see that in just a moment, just to confirm. Firefly, meanwhile, has been a fully fledged web app from the very beginning. And so here I am inside Midjourney, looking at some mansions on the surface of the moon, which I don't think really turned out that well. This doesn't appear to be the surface of the moon to me. But anyway, and you can just click on it, right, to see it big. And so what I'm going to do is just type im for imagine, because I am signed into a Midjourney bot, that is. And I'll just enter beautiful opulent mansion on the surface of Venus. Just so it's not on the surface of Mars or something along those lines. Now, I do want you to see it's waiting to start. So it's waiting to enter the job into the queue. So that does take a moment or two. And then, very helpfully, I think, it shows you the image developing from essentially a random visual field of noise. It's not entirely random, but it has different fields of noise that it works from, thousands upon thousands of them, and then develops them according to its training. And so here we are. And then if you want to see one of those guys up close, if you want to see, this isn't really the full resolution, but what you could do, this is the big resolution, then you can right click and choose save image and you'll get 4 megapixel images, or you could just copy and paste it into Photoshop. Meanwhile, here I am inside Firefly, and of course it's in beta again. That's why it's so very free. And I am not signed in as me. I just have this weird little purple, triangle icon for my face or whatever. Anyway, that's just because I signed in with a Google account. And so we've got this great interface, actually works beautifully, and it has these modules because it has specific applications of its AI. All right, and one of them, of course, is text to image. Pretty much that's what you get with Midjourney. And then I'll just paste in that exact same prompt, that is, and I'll just press the Enter key in order to get things started. And we will see a few moments later that we have some big opulent mansions on the surface of the moon. So once again, they are a megapixel apiece as things stand now. And you could just go ahead and click on one in order to zoom in, check it out, and then you can advance from one to another. Real quick, want to see an 11th way in which Firefly is better than Midjourney? It's all about taking a grid of images and creating similar variations over and over again. In which case, check out my Patreon, which is patreon.com/geeknow. And now back to 10 ways in which Firefly is better than Midjourney. And so you ask me, a GUI is a way easier way to work than a command line prompt. But anyway, up to you. Next, attention to ethics. So Adobe has really been trying to pay attention to the ethics of this thing. Adobe says it's trained, I'm just believing them, it says it trains Firefly on images, and they're largely photographic images, by the way, in its stock library, as well as public domain work. Now, I'm not sure how they determine what is and is not public domain, but still, the company is careful to avoid emulating specific artist style, and this is really important. It's developing a do not train tag. So this would be a tag that you include in your own images, and that would prevent anybody who buys in to do not train. They would also not train on your images. So even though it's happened in the past, it's possible that we'll have a little more control over things in the future. Midjourney has learned, but they're still working on that. Midjourney has learned from millions upon millions of uncredited paintings and other artwork, and I say more so than photographs because it's trained with artwork more than photos, and that hence it's basically painterly aesthetic. However, it's just so far, Midjourney has not gotten permission to do any of this training. So they are trying to come up with ways. In their defense, they are trying to come up with ways that if somebody actually comes to them and says, "Stop using my imagery" or "Stop using my name," that they will respond to that. Anyway, fourth, that was 3. This is 4. Generates 2 megapixels at 16 by 9 at a wide angle ratio. And so while Firefly maxes out at 1024 by 1024 pixels for square images, I have seen no indication otherwise. You can read things all over the place about how they go as high as 2000 by 2000 pixels. You tell me. If you figure out how to do that, I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But if you figure out how to do that, comment, please, because there ain't no way. I've messed around with Firefly a lot, and its square images are 1024 by 1024. It does, however, expand the height or width to 1408 pixels for portrait or landscape, respectively, and 1792 pixels for widescreen, which means we're getting close to 2 megapixel territory. Not 4, which is what you'd get with 2000 by 2000, but 2, which is not quite, it doesn't quite add up, but it's getting there with 1792 by 1024. Midjourney likewise supports portrait and landscape ratios, so it can do very wide images, 2 by 1, but it reduces the number of pixels in the other direction to stay inside the 1 megapixel range. So if you expand the width, it's going to diminish the height. We'll see an exception to that in just a moment, but that's generally the way it works when you're generating an image. All right, so I think that's a huge advantage because you get more pixels. That's just, common sense. Next, much faster. I don't know if you noticed that just a moment ago. If you've been watching the video so far and you notice how much faster Firefly is than Midjourney. Depending on the traffic, of course, Firefly and by extension Photoshop can generate a grid of images, those 4 images, in Photoshop's case it's 3, in under 10 seconds. Midjourney typically takes longer than 10 seconds just to queue and another 40 seconds to develop the image. Then again, the results are often worth it. All right, so here I am in Firefly. I'm going to get rid of this art tag here, and I'm just going to paste in a new prompt, pink donuts with colorful sprinkles, and click generate and get out your stopwatch. Check it out. This is going to be real time. I'm not going to speed this one up. Did you see how fast that happened? Less than 10 seconds. Now, I am recording this video at night. Presumably, not a lot of people are using Firefly right now. So that could have something to do with it. It could have light traffic, but this has been my experience over and over again. Whereas here inside Discord, looking at a Midjourney bot, I'll go with Imagine, of course, and just paste in that the same prompt, pink donut with colorful sprinkles. I want you to see waiting to start. This waiting to start is going to take longer than Firefly took to do everything. And so the waiting for the queue is a time-consuming experience. That was actually longer. That was more than 10 seconds. And then Firefly took to work its magic entirely. And now, on the other hand, and you can see that it's taken a while. It takes like 30, 40 seconds. It will happen in under a minute, generally speaking, as long as it doesn't get stuck or something. But it is going to take longer than it takes inside Firefly. That's just a fact. But it will show you the development process. So it's starting from a field of noise for each one of these images, and then it's building the donut up based on, what it's learned about donuts over time. And now here it is, it's done, but you can tell that took a lot longer. Again, rewatch the video, get out your stopwatch, etc. And here we have our donuts, which look great. I might go so far as to argue they look better than they do inside Firefly. They look a little fakier in Firefly, but still, so much faster. That is an advantage. All right, so at number 6, predefined content types in Firefly. Firefly offers 4 content type settings: none, photo, graphic, and art, each of which pretty straightforward. They do what they say they're going to do, more or less. Not to mention dozens of one-click styles, which we'll see in just a moment. Midjourney, that is, offers style parameters, such as Style Raw, which is going to produce a more photographic look. Showed that a couple of weeks ago, and actually last week. And Niji 5. So that's another one which has a bunch of styles. It has 4 different styles to choose from. But these 2 parameters serve much different purposes than none, photographic, and art. And so here we are back in Firefly. Here's the content type options right here. So I could just say, I want this not to be none like it is right now. I want it to be photo. Now, the thing to bear in mind about these content types is they're like checkboxes. So they're mutually exclusive. You can't turn on more than one of these specific guys right here, but you can see that we got a much more photographic effect. And now I could add a bunch of predefined styles as well. Let's see what would psychedelic, and they're not going to apply immediately. And you can apply multiples of those. So I could say, all right, low poly might be another good one to apply. Oil painting. Let's just try that, even though I've got photo as my content type right there. You can see it. But all these others are being added, and then I would just click generate again in order to get a whole new group of images here in, as you can see, less than 10 seconds. So very easy to apply. Once again, you do have style options, style parameters available to you in Midjourney, and they're very cool, but they produce very different effects. At number 7, right here, we have Generative Fill. So one of Firefly's most practical, we've talked about this a lot, most practical applications of its AI is Generative Fill, which you can use to insert or remove image elements. So it's essentially a retouching tool, kind of a leap forward from healing and content aware and all that stuff. Midjourney lets you upload and then riff off or blend images. So we saw that a couple of weeks ago, but it is not currently oriented toward retouching tasks. That's not what it's doing. Midjourney is all about image generation. And so just for larfs, let's see what we might do with this donut right here. And so I'll just click edit for this guy and say Generative Fill, so that we can edit it. And so notice that we have insert and remove that are available to us. So this is a little different than Generative Fill inside Photoshop, which requires a selection outline. But I'll just go ahead and brush here inside Firefly, which I quite like, actually. I like that you can use a brush. You can kind of use a brush in Photoshop in the quick mask mode or something like that, or you can use that quick selection tool. But let's say I brush a bunch of times and then I say, I want some blue, yummy frosting on my donut. And then I'll just go ahead and click generate to see what it comes up with. And again, very quickly. So typically less than 10 seconds. We end up getting some really wacky stuff right here. Isn't that awesome? And then, of course, I could say, well, gosh, I really do like this first one. Let's imagine. Don't like it that much, but still, what I want to do now is remove. So I'll click on remove instead. Would I like to save the current edit? Yes, definitely save that edit. And now let's just go ahead and paint away the hole this time. And I'm just going to click remove. And, you've got other options to work with, but the brushing is probably the most common way to go. And then you could say, well, didn't really totally get rid of the hole. Well, it did. It's now not a hole. It's a hole in the frosting, but it's not a hole in the donut. But, I guess this one is. And now for generative expand. So basically, both Photoshop and and Firefly allow you to expand in megapixel blocks. So while Generative Fill has not arrived in Firefly yet, it's still on the up and coming list. It has manifested with some disappointment in Photoshop. Now I say with some disappointment. Covered this a few weeks ago. It's just that what you do. Right? Just as a reminder, you go to the crop tool and then you draw up a crop boundary that's bigger. You increase the size of the canvas essentially. And then you set fill up here in the options bar to generative expand. The problem is, as long as you're not trying to generate more into megapixel at a time, which is pretty hard to do if you have a high resolution image. But if you're just doing little tiny, expanding just a little bit, then the results are potentially going to look fine. But nobody does that. And so if you expand by much, if you make the image much larger, you're going to have gummy, low resolution results. Hence the disappointment. However, more practical, that doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just more practical is Generative Fill, which lets you build out an image in 1 megapixel block. So you just select megapixel blocks at a time or smaller. They don't have to be rectangles even. They can be freeform selections. Midjourney offers a pan option that adds 512 megapixels. So in one direction at a time. So that irons out to be half a megapixel. So it's actually smaller. It's half the size that you can add using Photoshop. But let's check it out here inside Midjourney. And so one of these Surface of Venus houses, which one do I like best? What are you thinking? Should we go with this one? Yeah, let's do. Oh, nope, that's not how you do it. I want to hit U3, upscale 3, because that's the third image right there. And it acts like it's doing something. It says that it's waiting to start and makes a chirping noise. And then we see it big. So it didn't really do anything. It just gave it to me, just returned the larger 1 megapixel image to me. And now notice these guys down here. These are the pan options. So you can pan to the left, to the right, up, down. And so I'll go ahead and pan to the right here. And notice that it's waiting to start. This time it really is doing something. It's having to generate half a megapixel once again in order to extend the image, make it larger, by the way, so it is possible to get better than 1 megapixel results. But you could see that it took about more than 10 seconds to get in that queue. And now it kind of acts like, it's a little deceiving, it kind of acts like you're just going to get a megapixel. You're just going to get a square. But that's just how the preview works. And that's because it's showing you the 512 megapixels or the 512 pixels on the left that it's working from and the 512 pixels on the right that it's generating. So it is actually working in a 1 megapixel square, but it's only giving you 512 new pixels. And so notice that it did get wider. And now what you can do, let's say I decide that this one down right is the one I want to work with. I'll go with U4, so upscale 4. It's going to act like it's starting to do something. It's not really. It's just returning the full resolution image. And this time I would just go ahead and pan to the left, and that is going to invoke a new operation So it does have to wait to start. It does have to get into the queue. And pretty soon it should start where the queue is concerned. Again, this is what gets me is that, Firefly would be done by now. It'd be done with the image generation process. And it'd be done with, generative fill and a whole shebang. Whereas Midjourney has to take its sweet time. And this part, right, so it's about 10 to 12 seconds, a little more, to get in the queue. That's going to vary, of course. That depends on the activity as well, how many people are trying to access Midjourney at any given moment in time. And then it's another about 40 seconds for the actual image creation progress to complete. And it's cool that you can see it. Once again, you can actually watch the image develop. But now, notice that I can just click on this guy, and we do have bigger images. So now each one of them measures 2 megapixels wide by 1 megapixel tall. So it is adding progressively to the image, and you can keep doing that. The only thing is you have to, if I were to switch to, let's say 3 this time, if I were to bring that guy up, then even though I can continue to pan and add 512 pixels in one direction or the other, I am now locked into adding horizontal pixels as opposed to vertical pixels, and there's a good reason for that. So if I'd started vertical, I could keep adding to the height, but there's a good reason for that, and that's because it doesn't want to go more than a megapixel tall at this point. So it can't just all of a sudden add 512 pixels to the top, because that would be 2,000 pixels wide. And so it'd be a full megapixel that it's adding, but has to consider another megapixel as it runs its computation. Whereas I just want to make it clear, Photoshop, when you're using generative fill in megapixel blocks, it can generate a full megapixel at a time, and it does a really good job. All right, next we've got Works with Vectors. Firefly's generative recolor module allows you to upload, recolor, and export SVG files. So you save out an SVG file from Illustrator, you upload it to Firefly, you recolor it using the recolor module, and you export an SVG file that you can then turn around and open back up in Illustrator. Midjourney, by contrast, currently limits itself to pixels. So it's just doing pixels the way things stand now. And I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, but I'll just go ahead and click on this top right icon, the Adobe logo, and then it's this guy right here, Generative Recolor. You probably already know about it. And then you can either work from one of the presets, which is great if you want to learn what's going on, or you can upload an SVG file, or you can drag and drop an SVG file right here. And then you run a prompt, you recolor, and you get an SVG file back. And then finally, at number 10, we have type effects. And while there are ways to achieve stylized letters and numbers in Midjourney, you kind of have to hunt around and peck. There isn't like a real straightforward way to do it, and it doesn't always work very well. But the notion that somehow you can create stylized text in Midjourney that holds up in any way, shape, or form to Firefly is absolutely preposterous, because only Firefly provides a specialized module that lets you enter and edit your type right there on the fly, assign a font, and switch between effects. Also, the maximum resolution, this is crazy, is quite high. It's 5120 by 1024, so a total of 5 megapixels, which in the world of AI is extraordinary, by the way, based on the length of the character string. All right, so let's see how this works. I'll go back up here. Top right corner. This is a text effects. Adobe's still calling it text effects. It should be called type effects in my humble opinion. I feel very strongly about this, because text to image, that's taking text like letters, characters of text, words, and stuff like that, and converting them to an image. Where text effects, type effects, the type is the object. It's the thing that you want to affect. Anyway, I'll go and generate it. And what should we do? Let's do something pretty cool like puffy quilt. Yeah, why not? And it starts as the word Firefly, but check this out. I'm going to do just like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. JKLMNO. Oh, no, I forgot the end, didn't I? O. Just to make a really long string of type. And then I'm going to change it to this guy right here, Poplar, which is about the most condensed type there is. I don't want the background color to be anything, just transparent is going to work out fine. And now, and of course, you can modify how tightly this effect fits the type so that it can get all loose if you wanted to. I don't know if this particular effect is going to get very loose. Oh yeah, it does. Look at that. And then you have all these, you have different variations on the text effect that you can apply down here, and you can change the prompt if you wanted to. I'm going to change this back to type right here. But if I were to wait a moment for this to generate, little more time consuming than what we saw with text to image. But if you download it right here, then you're going to have the option. It's going to be 5 megapixels wide. No, it's going to be 5,000 pixels wide. Yeah, that's right. And altogether, it's going to be 5 megapixels. So it's going to be an extraordinarily huge image indeed. And you might be thinking, Deke, I don't know what world you live on that 5 megapixels is a lot of pixels. But again, in the AI realm, it truly is. Here is something else I created, a driftwood effect with all those letters that I just typed in. And I will shift tab away the right side panel so that you can see this is a wide image. I'm seeing it here at the 50% view size, so it's not zoomed in that far. And I'll just go up to the image menu and choose canvas size so we can see it measures 5,062 pixels wide. As I say, it can go as wide as 5120, at which point the height value would start to decline. So 5120 by 1024 is the biggest it's going to get. If it goes wider than 5120, then the height value is going to start going down, which in the case of this image would not be that big of a problem, but because we've got a bunch of additional height here. But of course, that watermark would start overlapping the text. And those, my friends, are the 10 ways, in my opinion, in which Firefly is better than Midjourney. For an 11th way Firefly slays Midjourney, go to my Patreon, which is patreon.com/DekeNow. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And then go to Deke.com and sign up for my newsletter. I'm Deke McClellan. This is Deke Now.